Welcome to the Behavior Code Podcast. I'm your host, Yogi Chris, PhD, and I'm bringing you another one of IMC Nation's greatest. So he has been attending the boot camps, the Love Spell 2.0 boot camps that take place in San Jose. He's been coming online. Now he finally came live this last time, which was the best time to come live because we got a whole extra day of training. Gave us a whole bonus day. And we're going to talk about the boot camp. His name is Jordan Demari, and he lives in Phoenix, Arizona, works security, and he's an avid student of Arash Bazar. As you know, I'm an avid student of Arash Bazar. I'll be releasing the No Fucks book coming up. That's a 60-page manual that covers an immaculate podcast called the No Fucks Given podcast. So look for that. And obviously, if you're catching this on iTunes or YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe. It's a downloadable episode, so I've been told that's a good thing. You can download the podcast episode, and so that's great. So if you want to do that, it's available free download. Okay, so this podcast, Behavior Code, was specifically the premise of it was interviewing IMC Nation people. Originally, people that did Tabiat program is a $25,000 program, and then it moved on to Messengers program, and that was $25,000 program. Some people did online for Messengers and Tabiat, which was $5,000 program. It was a big transformation. Now, moving forward into the new year, we started doing these Love Spell boot camps. By we, I mean Arash, and then I was working it for him, populating it. And Jordan was one of those guys that just right away jumped on it. It was within that price range. It's like, okay, I give it, and then the next month, give it again, and then give it again, and this last month, give it again, and it's like, and I've seen Jordan around for years. I've been studying Arash for 5 years, and I remember hearing Jordan Demari and Saturday Night Live lectures and this and that. Mm-hmm. And that was way back when. So welcome to the show, brother. How are you doing today? And what can you tell us about your journey so far with Arash Bazar and IMC?
Well, thank you, brother. Thank you for that introduction. That was very, very, very valuable. It's part of our skills that we learn, being in the field that we are in, demonstration of higher value. So I appreciate that. What I can say about myself is during this journey, I've truly just been consistent in following Arash and all his teachings. It's been of great value just following him and implementing different techniques and principles that I stand by, and really codes that I've stood by for years. And it's something that it's something you truly have to experience for yourself. In order to see that kind of change, you have to start to implement the things that he talks about. You have to start to live by the principles in which he talks about, because you've analyzed them for yourself, and now you're able to utilize those moving forward. So, I've been in Phoenix, Arizona pretty much my whole life. I moved here when I was 3 years old, and ever since, that's all I can remember. Definitely going out to San Jose and investing time and time again. I can say for sure it all pays off. All the changes have been, they were at a certain point, they were only internal. I was feeling like the internal changes were happening as I was going through each boot camp. But of course, going in person, and I remember talking about it briefly with Chris before. The experience is just different. I know I'm feeling internal changes, but now going there and coming back, I see external changes. I see the world outside of me really starting to transform. So thank you, brother, for that introduction.
For sure. It's interesting. Two things that grabbed my attention was this last thing you were saying about how the difference between going live to San Jose versus online. And then also you were talking about implementing the principles that he was teaching you. So maybe we'll save that one for later. While it's fresh in your mind, you came online to the boot camp, which a lot of people would be amazed. A $1,000 or $997 investment for, some hours of listening to a guy talk about, whatever he's talking about. You get some other lectures accompanying it. So you get like 20, 25 hours of lecture time of video for $1,000. And it's like, whoa. And then you come live and it's just $1,500. So it's very affordable compared to the online.
Right.
And what's the distinction for you? How could you relay to everybody the difference between the basic, someone called me. Basic, the content changes each month, so you can't really compare exactly. But what was the difference in person? Obviously, he's there, but what was the difference for you live versus online?
Yeah, great question. The hugest difference that I can say over, because it had an even deeper impact on me because, like you said, I've been studying Arash for a long time. I haven't met him in person until this past weekend, and studying him for 6 years at a time, and then only seeing him online and then seeing him in person. Um, that was a deeper impact, and that was like a life achievement for myself, first and foremost. So that was the major difference for me. Then, in addition to that, my experience wasn't just going to the boot camps and listening to the lectures. It was engaging with all my colleagues, as I like to call you guys now. Um, you know, engaging with you guys, eating with you guys, just hanging out, being around the like-minded individuals. It truly made a difference for how I was able to process everything.
Yeah, what was that
My
difference? Like the processing difference?
What was the difference in
Can you
processing?
say hi to Chris?
Yeah, yeah.
Part?
Yeah. What was the difference in,
He's
like, how is it
preoccupied.
processed different? You were saying it was processed differently when you were live. What was
Right.
describe that difference in processing? What does that mean?
Well, the hugest difference that I noticed was just obviously being in person. There's a, maybe it's not obvious, but
Yeah.
there's the difference is really being in proximity to Arash. You feel the energy. You feel the energy in person, and that energy that's being radiated from him, is contagious. It's the energy that bounces off of him because he carries so much force and energy and movement and purpose, really. Because he carries all of that, he's able to radiate that to you in person. So you feel that in person.
Nice.
It's different than actually being online like how we are now. Our conversation will go deeper, I would say, in person than as opposed to online.
Okay, so more of the energy is transmitted and you go deeper into the teachings or deeper into, obviously if you come live, there's a little bit extra time. There's some small interactions in between that make a big difference, like 30 or 60 seconds of interacting with them organically versus if you're online, you may never get that interaction, let alone there's so much better communication when you're in person. Anybody tried to do a video call, it's way better. My communication with Jordan's way better when we're in the same room than when we're online. Even though we look pretty good online, imagine what it was like, in person. And just with anybody, just, phone call your girl is different from video call your girl is different from in person with your girl. And okay, so that's great. So more of the vibe is transmitted. So let's go into this idea of the vibe and the principles. What are some of the principles? Well, we could even go back as far as like from the beginning or anything that stands out. What have been like two, maybe three of definite like moments that like were, you could attribute to these teachings that like you changed? Maybe in the dating game, I titled this episode so far, like the kind of preliminary title was dating, cheating, and something else about game. So any leaps in your evolution that stand out over the last few years?
Yes. One of the hugest leaps that I've made, and it was like it was of course an internal process that I went through. The principle where he said there's one contract, one rule that you do not break, and that is the one that you hold with yourself. The contract that you hold with yourself, the code that you live by, the way that you operate is alternative, compared to anybody else, and taking pride in experiencing your own code and your own having your own standards that you live by and your own, especially when it comes to dating, especially when it comes to relationships. The code that we live by isn't, I wasn't taught, to live by a code when it came to relationships, not to the degree that that I understand now, and so that was really big for me. Another one, I could say, he had the phrase, may you never be the same again. And I'd never understood that. I would hear it. It made, it sounded good, but outside of that, for me, it wasn't a reality until obviously this event. This event capitalized on it, brought together that whole philosophy for me, that principle that may you never be the same again is really your experience with me is going to change you and change you for the rest of your life, essentially. That's how I process that.
Yeah. What are some of these, the code that you're talking about? You're talking about a code to live your relationships by. Tell us a little bit about that. What is the code that you're referring to?
My personal code, is that what you mean? Or
Well, we were talking about leaps in your evolution, and you said one of these things that changed was your code of relationships. Tell us a little bit about what is
yes.
your code of relationships?
Yeah, so my code of relationships would be best explained by just saying the relationship that I have with one individual is going to come almost secondary to the relationship that I hold with myself, right? So the relationship that I know that I am building and growing with myself is going to come secondary to whoever else that is in the relationship, because I operate with the understanding that, you know, the more time that I spend balancing myself out and reflecting on how I live, you know, every single day, the better that I can impact, you know, somebody else, meaning that the you know, the other person is in a relationship with me. So I think that that would be one, you know, foundation of the code that I live by when it comes to relationships.
Well, this foundation, I'm trying to understand this. So the foundation is that you balance yourself out so that you're a stronger force for your partner. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
What are some ways that you balance yourself out that you've discovered for yourself in these last few years?
Well, simple things is getting in front of the mirror and speaking to myself. You know,
Oh,
I make that something that is so profoundly impactful on me, because of seeing myself say, you know, affirmations that I've been saying for years in the mirror to myself is different than just me just repeating affirmations. You know, for such a long time, I was going through the process of learning, you know, the keys to the law of attraction, meaning, you know, being able to visualize, think, and feel what it is that I want out of life. And, you know, without diving in and going through that process of like, you know, looking in the mirror and talking to myself and acknowledging myself and appreciating myself and say, hey, I truly enjoy, you know, how good looking you are today, you know, or you know, just affirming my own affirmations. You know, like one of the affirmations that I have is, I am so happy and grateful now that I have increasing quantities of income coming to me every day. You know, so simple affirmations like that, and saying those in front of the mirror were some of the things that I hadn't done before, but it was something that I discovered by, you know, making time to develop myself and have that foundation, um, of growth, you know, for myself, because I believe I came to that understanding through spending time by myself. You know, when I first got out of my very first relationship,
hmm.
um, I was scared. You know, I was scared to be alone. I
Ah,
was I had my own apartment, 1 bedroom apartment, and I remember the feeling that I had the night that I, you know, broke up with her.
hmm.
Um, you know, I was I was at a very low point in life. I could say I was living on her couch. You know, I was, you know, but I was still grinding. I wanted to be there, but we had stopped, you know, sleeping together. We had stopped engaging on any aspects to that degree, and our relationship became platonic because of that. And
Ah,
I was almost, you know, disgusted by myself and going through
why did
that.
that happen? How did that happen?
Man, great question.
Yeah, we got
the
to it.
the the process of me getting to that point was me chasing what I thought was my purpose at that time, and that purpose, it was just a different decision that I was making. I had gone to school my whole life, and obviously, well, I keep saying obviously. I don't know why I say obviously.
Yeah, you become aware. It's a game of
Yeah,
awareness, right?
absolutely. Um, even same thing. The the moment that I made the decision to stop going to school, that happened as a result of, you know, me studying uh, Arash's teachings as well. And obviously I looked at it for myself, and I came to that conclusion for myself, because that was the only thing that I had known. I had gone to school my whole life, and what I was going to school for wasn't as it didn't seem as beneficial as it could have been, as opposed to me studying what it is that I want to study. So, you know, when it came to relationships or even understanding, you know, the foreign exchange market was what I was diving into at that moment. And as I went through that process of transition, that's what led to that. I was just sacrificing, you know, my own space in order to be with the girl that I was always telling what my purpose was. You know, she had went through the process of, she actually came to a couple after hours. I don't know if were you around when there was after hours?
Yeah, I did one after hours. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
After hours was like a lecture that he would do after his lecture, and you would pay a lot extra. And I did it once, I think, and I fell asleep during it. And I asked, anyway, so yeah.
Well,
it was really late because I was on East Coast time, so it went from like 11 p.m. to like 4 a.m. That was the first time I ever did anything like that. I maybe it changed me because I was asleep, and I remember Samantha was my girlfriend at the time, and she was there. We were watching, and we just fell asleep like on the floor, and then that relationship didn't last that much longer.
Oh, man. But yeah, so going through that process for me, so Rush at that time had the after hours, and the after hours was how I got a part of the after hours, because you could either pay extra, or if you were the first like 5 to sign up at the time, then you would get in for free. So, you know, he had that going. So we got in twice for free. And
Andreas got him.
she was right there. She was right there next to me, you know, and we were talking to Raj. He was asking us questions. She was asking her questions. The girls were engaging, like, you know, my girlfriend amongst Arash's girlfriends at the time were also engaging. So going through that process, you know, of sharing myself and sharing my purpose with the girl that was there at the time, that's what led up to me feeling like it was okay for me to sleep on her couch and do the things that I was doing at that time, because, you know, I just felt like the communication was clear on that aspect. And
it probably was. It probably was for like 1 to 3 months, right? But how long did that go on for?
Yeah, exactly.
About 1 to 3 months, she'll give you the chance to like get your shit together and like start succeeding. Like you could be broke as a joke, and just if you talk the talk, then she'll give you some time, sleep on her couch, she'll pay for you, she'll feed you, whatever. But after 3 months, man, if you haven't made like drastic improvements, that's is that your experience too?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, she so I was going through that process for about 5 months total. Yeah, from the month of August to November. And is that 5 months? 3 months?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I went through that. So that was very, very impactful on me. But that's how I arrived at being home alone. I believe that was an original question.
Well, yeah. I mean, just what have you learned about relationships in the process over the last few years, and especially in studying AZD, and especially just in like the boot camps, you know, giving people an idea of what's the difference between going live versus going online. What are some transformations maybe that you've seen? Because you did a lot of events and you've done a lot of training and a lot of programs for the last several years, but this boot camp is it's a much larger investment, and obviously it's worth it because you keep returning. What are some things, like if somebody, let's start with like somebody that's never studied the IMC method.
Yeah.
What should they expect from a boot camp? Like what are some outcomes or how would you sell someone in like 30 to 60 seconds? Like, man, you gotta blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, I would just tell them, you know, the value that I gained, you know, going through the process, of course, and that value is in experiencing Arash, you know, in person, and was I don't even know how to really put it into words just yet. You know, it's an experience that, you know, if you've never been around an individual that just expresses pure truth, you know, from the bottom of their heart, and is very, very genuine, you know, in their communication, and has a lifestyle structure and an order to what it is that they're doing, then, you know, the process of becoming familiar with somebody to that degree is engaging with that person, you know, time and time again. And I know it happens over time. It's not something that happens, you know, overnight.
You know that what happens over time, like the relationship, or what are you saying?
Building the relationship with Arash. Because
with Arash.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
As a student, you building your student relationship with Arash.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
even just, you know, what I'm saying is the interaction, getting in touch with anybody of a high degree is going to take time, you know, to get there in terms of, well, time and a decision, really, because it's a matter of a decision that I made to finally, you know, go to San Jose. It's not like this is the first
I think
opportunity,
that's
that
really
came
what it
across.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah, the San Jose. Because I remember when I first went, because I was a nobody.
right,
Nobody knew who I was. And then on my birthday, I paid $5,000 and went and did that. Um, and it was a very similar process. I remember some events after that. I was getting recognized in front of other people as somebody outstanding, even though I wasn't like high level at anything. I mean, I was high level at I wasn't high level at anything like relevant to what was being taught,
yeah.
but I was maybe high level investment in it, and which showed
What was
something.
what was it
Uh,
that you had paid for? Was that the
that was a
one-on-one?
one-on-one at the time. That was a
Okay,
one-on-one,
right,
and then later we see this similar example. I would say with Fernando. Fernando was not a student for very long, maybe like maybe 2 or 3 months, and then he said yes to 25K investment, and he could do it because he was in real estate, and he can do it. Different people have
right,
different places that they can do it, but
sure,
he was a relative, like he was off the radar. Nobody, you know, the program he was a part of had lots of people in it, so he was just
right,
one of the names that was in it. And versus, you know, coming to San Jose Live, and then very rapidly there's something visible about the authenticity and the dedication. There's something that's so receptive in like the eyes and the ears, and so willing to
absolutely,
accept correction. And I think
right,
this is why I accelerate so fast, because
mhm,
I'm willing to accept correction in a
yeah,
way that's just, I don't know, nothing uh it's just not, I don't know. The
yeah,
harder part is really, the more difficult part is implementing the correction. But
yeah,
like, uh, what can you talk about that? You were saying earlier about implementing these principles.
yes.
What have you found are successful things that you were like, you're surprised how easy it was to implement, and other things that maybe you're still looking to implement, like you see it as a principle, but you're looking to implement it?
Yeah, good question. The next thing I can see implementing that has been a challenge thus far. I say challenge, but I right at this point in time, from this state of mind, I'm learning to appreciate challenges. Um, this challenge is just the communication, the communication, being in communication with people that I haven't been in communication with before, being in communication with you guys, you know, I say, you know, my colleagues and everybody that attended the boot camps, being in communication with Arash even, you know, actually, if you don't mind, brother, I want to read the text that I sent Arash at the end of the boot camp.
Yeah.
Let me see here. So this was my reflection on pretty much what happened. It was right after we had left for the boot camp. I remember him saying directly that he wanted the photo of Donald Trump and General Mattis. And so I sent him, I sent him that picture. And right after that, the words that I said were, "Thank you for an incredible weekend experience, brother. You have given me the code to life. And for this, I am forever grateful. Looking forward to many more experiences, learning the element of constant change." And I felt like that was me holding, oh, did I mess up the IG? Can you hear me?
Man, it froze. Would you mind reading that text one more time?
Yeah, not at all. I don't mind. 1 second.
Oh, that's why it's not on there, because he's reading the text.
Yeah, did
He's
it
not on
pause?
the Instagram because he's reading the text.
It
Yeah,
paused on
it kicked you. That's all
Instagram?
right. Go
Okay.
ahead and just say they should.
Yeah,
If
I'll
you're on
read it.
Instagram, you should be on the Zoom anyway. So we'll wrap it up.
So one more time. So like I was saying, so I sent him the picture of Donald Trump and General Jim Mattis, and that was
Oh
the
yeah,
precursor. That was the precursor to the message that I sent. So I said, "Thank you for an
yeah.
incredible weekend experience, brother. You have given me the code to life, and for this, I am forever grateful." Now the prayer hands, the 100, and the fist bump. And I said, "Looking forward to many more experiences, learning the element of constant change." And I felt like that, in a way, summed up, my personal experience of it, and as much as I could express it,
Wow.
those are the
Yeah.
words that came to mind after that, because obviously, or there we go again, obviously, my experience with Ross has just progressed over time, and it's just been getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and he reaches new levels, new avenues of, you know, steering our minds in different directions, and being able to communicate that to each and every one of us, I think is very, very valuable, you know, to
this
be
is
around
great.
that.
DC, if you could clip that, I mean, at about the 30-minute mark, that'd be a great clip. We should get that to the teacher, because that's nice, what you just said. So you were talking about, you said this one thing I was going to ask you about. In your text to him, you were saying he showed you the code to life. What do you mean by that?
Great question.
Totally great question.
Absolutely. The code to life, how I broke it down, I was writing notes, you know, of course, during the boot camp. And at that point, we had reached like kind of the epitome of a conversation about, you know, order and chaos, and talking about the element of constant change, and understanding that, I was able to really grasp an idea. You know, I remember I was actually explaining it to one of my good friends out here, and I was telling them, you know, I reached a point in the lecture where, you know, I stopped thinking so much, and I was able to just listen. I was able to listen, and me, in that process of just listening, I was able to receive higher thoughts, you know. So I believe that I received the thought of the life code as, you know, the name of, you know, potentially one of my businesses, because there's I believe that there's if we separate the male and the female, what I had asked Ross as well while we were in lecture was, you know, what is the opposite of, you know, a warrior code? You know, the warrior code is what I felt like. The warrior code is what I felt like he was explaining. You know, he went through the whole explanation of what a warrior is, and how to perceive a warrior. And that's why I had asked him what was the opposite of that, because I wanted to understand what would the female categorize that as. And he said the seductive code. And I like that.
Yes.
So the life code would be the warrior code, and the seductive code, you know, it's pure opposites. And it's the explanation of both of those. So that was what I meant when I said
that's
that.
rad. That's rad. I think that gave everyone a lot of value there. That idea, what you just put together, and that's what the training is. That's what the boot camps are, is decoding what you just said. Perfect. That was perfect. That's a great place to end it, actually. That's wonderful. I don't see any questions don't on Facebook or whatever. If you're catching the recording, you can download it from the podcasts. You can just leave a comment or whatever on iTunes, any of the podcasting platforms, YouTube. If you want to find Jordan, talk with him about his experience, how can people find you on Instagram?
Just search I am Jordan Demari, and on Instagram, and that's where I'm at.
I am Jordan Demari, Demari. Yeah,
that's correct.
Cool. And awesome. Thanks so much, Jordan. And we'll catch you every Tuesday. It's the same Zoom link, everybody. Behavior Code, 5 p.m. Pacific. All right. See you later.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yeah.